It's also found its way onto the front page of the Sowetan newspaper this morning. So the Sowetan newspaper covers a story where there's a project for a taxi rank in Limpopo. That project is being completed with grant funding, but it's been going for 14 years. They've already spent 310 million rand on the incomplete taxi rank, and there's another 46 million to be spent on it now. It's the 6th contractor that they're appointing for completion of this. Now, I can tell you right now, 14 years ago, when this project was first approved and when a tender was issued for it, the amount involved would have been less than 356 million, which is where we're sitting at the moment. It's not unique, Chairperson. It is something that we saw at a number of projects on our oversight, but it's something that we're aware is happening in all of our constituencies and around the country. So what's happening is that grants are being issued or grants are being disbursed in order to achieve a certain outcome. Again, we can't lose sight of the fact that there's people that need to be served. The point of the grants is to actually provide services to people out there. Now, the funding is being used, but the project never seems to be delivered. And of course, this creates a conundrum, because what happens is that the project is, gets to a 60–70% completion and then stalls. And of course, then there's a new contractor, or then there's a new tender, or something weird happens, and so on. The bottom line is that you can't leave a half-built white elephant. You can't abandon a project. So it's almost as if you're forced into completing the project. So you throw more money at it, and then that money gets wasted as well. And then some more money gets wasted thereafter. And so we end up in a situation where ultimately a project costs, 10 times what it was initially envisioned to cost. And by the time the end result is delivered, the first bits that were built are starting to become dilapidated. And of course, we start from scratch. So it's a pattern, Chairperson, and it's something that's repeated all over the place. So our job as members of the NCOP is to find out how to get around this, how to stop this, how to make sure that things work a little bit differently. The only way we can do that is if we know where these things are happening. That's number one. And number two is that we need to know what tools are available for us to address these issues. And I think PBO, if you can maybe guide us with suggested courses of action, suggested places that we can read about these things, and then make recommendations, whether it be to the disbursing department of the particular grant, to Treasury, or to wherever else. I'm not a fan of indirect grants, where the national department takes over responsibilities that should probably vest with provinces and municipalities. But ultimately, where there's a lack of capacity demonstrated, someone's got to step in. And we can't just leave the people that have been dragging projects on for 14 years or more to continue just milking money out of projects. And this escalation of costs, it's untenable. Now, I mean, I'm the first one to accept that. The point is that site establishment is expensive, and final finishings and site disestablishment is expensive. So the point is that your construction costs invariably, not your costs, but your margins. Your margins in construction happen in the middle. It follows a bell curve where your costs are high initially, so your margin is quite low. Your margin then obviously escalates in the middle of a project. That's where you make your money. And then at the end, your margin is squeezed again. So, of course, this is why we see so many contractors absconding after 70% of completion, because, of course, they've made their fat. And, you know, now they don't have the money. They've spent the money. They've bought the Lamborghini. And they don't have the money to fund the last bit of the project. So they abscond. Then, of course, we put the last completion out to tender. No one wants to touch it because it is incredibly expensive to come in and do that last little bit of finishings and site disestablishment and rehabilitation. You know, that's the expensive part. So suddenly the cost for doing that escalates dramatically. So either you find no contractors available, or you find contractors available, but at an incredibly high price, and we're paying an absolute premium for this. So my question is therefore this, Chairperson, you know, has PBO got, and it's something I asked at our meeting the other day, has PBO really got some research that can point out to us, you know, this project was started on X date, its initial budget was Y amount. We're now sitting having spent Z amount, and 15 years later, and this is the issue. So a bit of an analysis of how many projects that are funded by grants, and let's look particularly at infrastructure projects that are funded by grants. How many are delivered on time? How many are not delivered on time? And what the cost of that is. But then more importantly, Chairperson, we need to know what are the interventions that can take place. Do we just leave it? Do we just leave an incompetent province or municipality to complete their projects, or to keep trying to complete it, regardless of the outcomes, until it reaches completion? Do we just turn a blind eye and allow the fiscus, because, you know, it's only grant funding, so the money is budgeted. Doesn't matter what the ultimate outcomes are. You know, it's quite clear that getting a qualified audit or getting a bad audit outcome is no problem to most departments or municipalities. They don't seem to care much about that. They just carry on and milk the system. What steps can we take? What measures can we take? At what stage does Treasury step in, or the national department that is responsible for the disbursement of the grant? You know, at what stage do they step in? What is their authority in terms of that? You know, in terms of Schedule 3 of the Constitution and other spaces, the PFMA, etc. What recourse is there when a project gets to a point of abuse, like this one in Limpopo, but like as well the projects that we saw when we were in the Northwest? It has left me feeling very deflated, Chairperson, to see how easy it is for the money that we approve in the Division of Revenue bill each year, to see how that money that we approve is being literally wasted, and spending bad money or spending more money on bad projects that just don't seem to ever have an end. I'm very frustrated, and I'd love to have some guidance in terms of what actions we can take in this regard. That, Chairperson, will be the golden egg that we get to, if we can find a decent answer. I'd love to hear some suggestions and alternatives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the submission, Honorable Ryder. Honorable Brits.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I want to switch on my video, but you're not going to see my face, only the background. The problem still has not been resolved. Thank you once again for the presentation. Now, since last week's Oversight Week, I'm attempting to find the common denominator, and I'm figuring out for myself why projects are failing and why they are being delayed to such an extent that what we've seen last week. Now, all roads lead to one problem, according to me, and I've said it last week, and I'm going to say it again: systemic governance failure. Now, I think the Select Committee on Appropriations has its work cut out for us. Money is being spent without reliably producing the promised or verifiable results, such as reduction of service backlogs. Think about, for example, a clinic that we've seen, improved and transparent equitable access to funding, delivery of working assets and effective job creation, which affects economic growth. The presentation highlights that allocations, the frameworks and reports don't translate into assets, services and outcomes that residents and the public of South Africa not only deserve, but they await these outcomes. Now, the grant system needs realignment in order to do that. Now, this presentation again highlights for me one core issue. There is spending without tangible outcomes, which is caused by fragmented design. As we've seen, for example, at the clinic, there was a design problem. And at for example, the nurses training center that we've seen, where there is clearly a design problem. I remind you of the cables that were open. Then there's weak preparation for the project, for projects in general. And then there's an underperforming capacity, as we've seen throughout last week. The remedy is maybe to tighten the chain from the allocation to the verified outputs, so that the outputs be measured on a regular basis, to sustained outcomes through to consolidation, performance-based incentives, rigorous stage gate reporting. Now, what I mean with stage gate reporting, that the system should be designed that there is proper reporting at very specific stages of a project in order to limit or eliminate cost increases, as well as delayed projects, and then transparent standardized reporting. I think that should be looked into. Now, there's a common denominator, a persistent misalignment between the spending and the performance. And according to me, that is driven by fragmented accountability. We've seen it throughout last week. And there's weak project and portfolio management. And this results that input, the money that Honorable was talking about, the money that we are disbursing through the bills are poorly coupled to outputs and outcomes, which affects service delivery levels, due equity distribution. That's why provinces ask the question, what factors are being taken into account when the equity is determined? And then real job creation. Now, there are, according to me, some underlying reasons for these failures. For example, fragmented and overlapping mandates. We must have a look at that. That mandates do not overlap, and where they overlap, that there is effective measures put in place, which sphere will take responsibility for what. What we've seen is weak project preparation and readiness. Sometimes it is haphazardly, and sometimes it is due to fiscal dumping. What we've also seen and heard is capacity constraints in municipalities. I'm not going to dwell on that one, but I can talk quite a lengthy time on incapacity in municipalities. And then what I've identified is a misalignment between incentives and accountability. If we look carefully at the current system. Transfers is rewarded by spending of money and not verified performance. In other words, if we look at the function of the Auditor General, and we've touched on that last week, that whole process should be redesigned in order to reward performance and not necessarily reward the spending of the transfers. We've identified procurement and contract management weakness. The Honourable Rider touched on that, so I'm not going into that further. And then timing and cash flow rigidities. Last week we've heard, and I've termed it taking from Paul to pay Pete. That should not occur in the system of grants. And then one thing that still bothers me is maintenance neglect. I've asked the question at the clinic last week, what provision are you making for maintenance of this project once it is completed? So based on what I've said as the introduction or premise, what I want to know from PBO, and I've prepared 3 questions for the PBO. First, how can the current conditional grant framework be restructured so that allocations and transfers are directly linked to verified outputs and measurable outcomes rather than mere expenditure reports? And what unified performance reporting standard does the PBO recommend across all spheres of government? My second question to PBO, given the overlapping and fragmented design of multiple infrastructure and service delivery grants, what reforms does the PBO propose to rationalize and consolidate these instruments, clarify institutional roles, for example, between municipalities, provinces, and SOEs such as Eskom and water boards, and strengthen intergovernmental coordination to reduce duplication and inefficiency? And my third question evolves around capacity, sustainability, and accountability. What systemic governance changes that covers project preparation, municipal capacity development, long-term maintenance funding, and consequence management? Now, what does the PBO consider essential to ensure that grant funding in infrastructure is not only delivered on time and within budget, but also remains functional and sustainable after completion? Those are my 3 questions. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Brett. The last will be Honourable Swart.
Good day, Honourable Chairperson. I'm also hidden now behind my camera, switch off my camera. Honourable Chairperson, firstly, good morning to everyone, and thank you for the presentations and every bit as we go forward in this 7th administration. I learn every day something. Thank you for everything that has put in, to present today, Prof. Janchis and your team. Chairperson, I fully 120%, agreed wholeheartedly with what Honourable Rider said. See, we've said to one another right at the beginning of this administration that we want to leave a legacy. A legacy for what? Where does it start? And that is what Honourable Riders, said is, and that is for me, the golden egg. If we can create something, if we can really, collectively as a team, NCOP, government, fight all these things so that we can leave that golden egg as a legacy. Chairperson, just as an intro, while the principle behind conditional grants is sound, steering national priorities, ensuring accountability and setting minimum service standards, the reality on the ground tells a different story. It's not only where we were last week. That is across South Africa, across provinces and municipalities. We continue to see this widespread of mismanagement, lack of capacity, and outright corruption in the use of these grants. Projects are delayed or abandoned, and that is one thing, Honourable Chairperson. And there's often no visible improvement in the people's lives, people that we serve. I said it last week where we were. We are the servants of the people, despite millions being transferred to our communities. This raises a serious question for me. How can the 7th administration truly claim to build a new legacy when the same systemic failures persist at municipal level? Chairperson, my question also is, will National Treasury consider implementing stricter performance-based conditions, including the withholding or reallocation of funds where municipalities consistently fail to deliver tangible outcomes? And that is what we all want. Everyone, irrespective what color of your t-shirt, what color of your shoes. That is what we want for our children. That is what we want for our young people. That is what we want for our elderly. Tangible outcomes. And secondly, Honourable Chairperson, will the department support this that came up, a national capacity building intervention to professionalize grant management? Otherwise, we're going to go on and go on. And next year, the year after, we're going to ask the same old question, ensuring that taxpayers' money finally reaches the people it has meant to serve. Honourable Chairperson, you know, what we've experienced, myself also with the team last week, corruption is not only, you know, the contract is not only where corruption is started. Most of the time, it's a partnership, the connection from out the offices of people who need to serve the people, from out the officials. You know, sometimes, Honourable Chairperson, I must be very honest, that we as the 7th administration said, we said we're going to follow a strategy, we're going to do oversight. Sometimes what frustrating for me came in a year ago, we ask all these questions every day, every month, every quarter, but you know, the real things on the ground I don't see happening. And that is where I really want to plead to each and every one, irrespective, you know, of as I said, where we stand behind which door, but we need to fight these things, a better life for everyone in South Africa collectively. And just a couple of questions, Honourable Chairperson. Will the PBO recommend consolidating smaller fragmented infrastructure grants under one transparent performance framework to improve tracking and to reduce duplication. And the second one is if the PVO, if they can provide data showing how much of the 161 billion rand infrastructure investment since 21-22 has resulted in operational assets and not merely budgeted projects. How can Parliament ensure that indirect grants managed by national departments are not used to bypass local accountability? And then the electricity and energy, to a question from my side, will Treasury consider, Chairperson, introducing private sector co-financing or performance contracting for electrification projects to improve oversight? What mechanisms are in place to ensure municipalities are use qualified engineers and not politically connected contractors? And this reality, Chairperson, of what I saw personally and what I had in my mind, contractors who are politically connected. And that is where it starts. That is where it starts without in the offices of the people who are supposed to serve the people out here. And I tell you again, it's a feature of my kids, your kids, and our youth of South Africa. On the human settlement, Chairperson, we really need to, we need innovation. Innovation. Because the backlogs, what we saw alongside that, I took some videos, because I always thought that how people, pointing fingers to the Western Cape, I always thought it's only Western Cape that have this informal settlements. And the backlogs, people staying in a 4x6, that hot, corrugated iron of structures. How do we allow it? And where we've crossed on our way to Klerksdorp, I saw the massive informal settlement on our left-hand side. I've got a video without any services. And my question, and being a mayor, and that is where we started. Cape Agulhas municipality was pissed on the Western Cape for the informal settlement upgrade. But nationally, if you see what has been done up until now, and the backlog, and the total of informal settlements in our country, it's getting out of control. So we really need to come up with innovation. Need to sit down as government, and how can we go out and else, and not the same thing what we did. We built now houses worth of 600 or 500,000 rand for a family, but there is so much, and I've did an investigation in Cape Agulhas. There's so much cheaper ways, even to build a bigger house. But we need to come up in this 7th administration with something else. And just one question also, Chairperson, should future USDG allocations be conditional on public release or project level data, including beneficiary numbers and costs? And then on the water and sanitation, just 2 questions. and I'm going to rush through. Should Parliament recommend a moratorium on new projects until maintenance and completion reports are verified for existing ones? And what mechanisms can ensure sustainable post-construction maintenance funding? What mechanisms can ensure sustainable post-construction maintenance funding? And then on the last, Chairperson, capacity building, how will the smart meters grant, 2.3 billion, be safeguarded against corruption and poor project management? Is there coordination between ISDG, FMG, and EPWP to align training with actual municipal vacancies? And given the EPWP's drastic drop in full-time equivalent jobs from 93.309 to 26.906, how does Treasury justify this decline despite similar spending? And the last question, Honourable Chairperson, then I'll be finished. Will PBO recommend merging fragmented capacity building grants into a single local government capacity grant? I thank you.
Thank you for your submission, Honorable Swart. Prof. Jantjies, kindly lead the team in responses.
Thank you so much, Chair and members, for the points. Quite a mouthful. And as I repeat what I said when I started, this presentation was timely scheduled to link with the work that was done by the committees last week on oversight. Can I ask Dr. Landi to come in? Colleagues, I know Dr. Mukund will also come in, and then I'll come lastly with some of the key issues there. Orlando, do you want to come in?
Yes, I can start, but members, I certainly do not have all the answers to your questions. Initially, when we started this assessment, we thought it would be a very good information piece for the members of the select committees, specifically in terms of to providing you with evidence and also possible suggestions for recommendations. And today I actually found that this document really can contribute to all the issues that you've raised, especially when you ask us to provide recommendations. That's one of the reasons why we also included the purpose of each department, so that we can try and determine whether the administering of a specific grant is actually aligned to that purpose of the department. So we can start there. If there's a misalignment, the grant should not be administered by that specific department. Then in terms of the roles and responsibilities, I've only summarized some of the roles and responsibilities that are actually reflected in the schedules to the Division of Revenue Bill. There are so many roles and responsibilities identified in the legislation in terms of national departments, firstly, which administer the grants. Then the National Treasury has got a role and responsibilities. The provincial local government departments has got responsibilities. So, Honourable Fritz, I think, actually summarized it very well in terms of Honourable Fritz, in terms of the fragmented mandates. And then in terms of the capacity building, there is almost in each and every grant, there is a component for capacity building. And I also don't know what the best practice would be. But in terms of the capacity building, each department is trying to do capacity building. There are a lot of funding from the National Treasury, which the National Treasury also administers in terms of capacity building in municipalities. Then there's also responsibilities by the provincial government to provide capacity building. And then SOLGA is involved in capacity building, but they just transfer the funds to universities. So it might be a good opportunities for government to involve the university in terms of all the different capacity building programs that we are currently funding for local governments. And then in terms of the reforms, the Treasury did start a whole project in terms of the reforms, and the reforms are still continuing over the medium term. But I think this committee can also get involved in those reforms. The Treasury, I actually went through the presentation of the Treasury in terms of the reforms, but there are a lot of other things that we identified within this presentation that has not been addressed by the reforms, specifically the monitoring and evaluation, the complexity within the schedules, and the long list of outputs that each and every grant actually list. And most of those things might not even be relevant for that specific grant or a municipality. So they cannot report on it. So then in terms of the long list of outputs required, the reporting is so minimal because there's only the municipalities might also only be able to produce those outputs. I don't have the answer in terms of corruption and the supply chain management because that continues despite over the years we've spent a lot of money in terms of capacity building, in terms of project management, supply chain management, and to actually build capacity within municipalities. And then there was in terms of the National Treasury, they receive quarterly reports on business plans of all departments. So, but the National Treasury only report on the expenditure of conditional grants. Their reporting doesn't include any performance information in their reporting to Parliament. So that's a huge gap, and that is also the reason why the PBO started this project, that we try and update the performance information on an annual basis on specific grants. So members, yes, as I said, I don't have all the answers to the questions, but the report that we've produced in terms of to try and provide you with a holistic picture of all the infrastructure grants in one report, and all the capacity building in one report. I think we've started the conversation in terms of the evidence that we currently provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Nemia. Mukundi, do you want to come in? Before I come in, anybody else? Come in, Mukundi. All right.
Good morning again, Honorable Chairperson and colleagues. And some of the questions that are raised today talk to the.
Mukundi, I think you can give your video because you can't see. You can see just Parliament screen. Yeah, leave the chair. Yeah. Now that's much better. Yeah, it's okay now.
Apologies for that. I was just reflecting that most of the questions that are asked in this committee, as well as previously, do talk to issues that can repeat time and again. And over time, we have indicated that most of these issues have to do with consequence management needing to be implemented. Yes, indeed, legislation currently in place covers most of the issues that are raised. For an example, issues that Honorable Mawisa, ask about why money is spent and then it's not talking to service delivery. It's the same issues that Dr. Nalindi alluded to. Sometimes the processes are not that aligned. That is why the PBO, when we report, especially Dr. Nalindi's presentation, she also puts in a service delivery indicator to show the impact of the spending or on the ground or on the communities out there. Unfortunately, currently that system is not how it's designed. So that is why sometimes there are gaps. So the municipalities, they do fail to deal mostly with water leakages, what we call non-revenue water. This then, yes, indeed, it leads to water that is not billed, which means then loss of revenue for municipalities. However, such water losses is not directly billed to household, because households billing is linked to the meter. So smart meters, in that regard, it's a great innovation, and as the PBO, I think we do welcome the use of smart meters, because it has proven successful in some areas. But yes, there are issues around it. But as far as it is designed to improve billing to household, it does do that process up to a certain extent. However, non-revenue water is then a loss to the municipalities, or not specifically to households. Yes, with the issue that was raised by Honorable Nova about whether grants should be combined. Well, National Treasury is undertaking such a process, or to review conditional grants. So once that process is then finalized, then members will have an opportunity to influence. I think National Treasury has also presented to one committee, to some of the committees in Parliament, providing an update on that process. So once that process is completed, or once the draft document is out, members of Parliament will have an opportunity to be able to influence that. With regard to the issue maybe of linking the grant performance to funding, well, the DORA as it is already provides such powers within the DORA itself. So if you look at there are sections, I was just looking at it now, where there are sections, section 16, section 17, 16, section 17 and 18 talk about withholding allocation, stopping allocation, reallocation of funds, as well as changing service providers. All these things, most of the things are already made available on the legislation. It's just a matter of enforcing them and following up, and ensure that they are indeed implemented as recommended. I'm just running through my notes just to check some of the questions that were asked. Yes, also the issue around why should projects continue for over a decade without coming to an end. The issue of repeated increasing variation orders to various projects. Well, all these issues, like I'm indicating, there are made provisions for in the current legislation. So currently there might not be a need to actually come up with new regulations per se. It's a matter of enforcing what is already available, because the DORA does make, like I indicated, provisions for stopping and reallocation, as well as changing what they call appoint an alternative implementing agent. It does provide for that. Also, the issue that Honorable Ryder requested even last year, that is it possible for the people to show a detail per project? Well, per project, it might be a bit difficult, because we don't have information at that level. But what we can source is information per grant, per province. That one can be readily available. But I will engage with National Treasury, because they did give me the contacts, the team that presented last week. On maybe if they've got that information, then I can request it and then have a look and see what type of analysis can come out of it. Yes, the issue of spending more money on bad projects is also covered with the current DORA. It does make provisions for that. Why projects delay the issue around systemic governance issue. I think overall, in summarizing, I think the issue has to do with governance challenges. The challenges if you will look at any report produced by whether it's the public sector itself or the private entity or universities, they point out to the same issues that keep on recurring. So there is a need to ensure that people who are found on the wrong side of not maybe implementing the necessary projects on time or within, there's some sort of consequence management for that. Until something like that happens, unfortunately, it seems that such problems are going to keep on recurring, because legislation is just a matter of influencing it or implementing it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Chair, I'll quickly run through some of the points that I've made, but I think because the questions were quite long, we've noted the committee secretariat to send us a list of the questions. We've seen them. We'll try to respond to specific ones more in detail, and where we can refer the committee to specific information, we'll ensure that happens. but I'll go through, I have 5 themes that I want to respond to also, in addition to what the team have said. The first theme is really around the poor reporting, the lack of transparency. I think I think in the last meeting, I did mention that the Standing Committee on Appropriations has commissioned the PBO to support them in developing some sort of reporting mechanisms where rubric where they'll send it, Parliament will send it to the department, say, look, this information that you want us to send it to us in order for us to be able to do oversight on the spending, on performance and so on. And I did say in the last meeting, I feel that mechanisms would also work quite well with the select appropriations, because a lot of the things here, what I've always had a problem with over the years of time, and also doing the academic work, is that government often obviously will report the information that they want us to see. So maybe we need to guide them, as my initial, as during the conclusion of the session, to say, I feel there's a very good opportunity for Parliament to really drive reforms in regards to particular oversight. So I feel such mechanisms the committee could use and guide what information we want the departments or the entities or municipalities to develop to us. And I think what we'll endeavor to do during this process will engage the committee's research and content team to also see how that mechanisms we can also recommend for select appropriations, particularly around these areas, because there's a lot of issues around reporting, which is not helping us for oversight, and it makes it difficult for us to see what is really going wrong. And as members have seen, we've seen the issues there. So that's the first point. That mechanism would have to come from Parliament to guide them in sense of how what information we want them to report. And Chair, members, we need to be able to send the departments back if they're not providing us information that we want for oversight purposes. We can't continue in that sense where we get information that's not useful for oversight, particularly that talks about the outcomes and the output. Another point around the same issue, I've noted here, Congress must use its power, in my view, to formally request these unpublished reports. It's very concerning that we can't get. So, I mean, what we could do is give examples of some of this report as our presentation done. Use the powers to demand this information in particular in that regard. The third point around this theme really to sort of standardizing report, which links to the rubric as well. In a DORA itself framework, maybe there need to be very consideration to ensure that DORA, the DORA framework really enforces simpler, mandatory, non-negotiable templates where non-financial information must be published on a quarterly basis as well. Because the bigger issue, even if you listen to the audit as well, the bigger issue is about the performance of non-financial information. Now, one of the considerations that the Parliament could do is really mandate that as well. As much as the financial information is mandatory, the committee might as well make recommendations that non-financial information should also be mandated as part of the DORA framework for departments and municipalities, all the different spheres thereof. And I said earlier on, one of the fourth point under the theme relates to a principle of the committee should consider money. I mean, linking back to that point, consider money spent without reporting out as a finding for financial mismanagement, because what the issue that we see a lot of times that we're struggling to really show the impact of the spending. Now we're saying maybe what we could, because normally entities and departments, they tend to respond when there is a finding of mismanagement, financial mismanagement, and maybe that lack of reporting should also be classified as a finding for financial mismanagement as well, not just administrative lapses. So maybe that way it ensures that we can get that information which tracks the outcomes and the outputs on the conditional grants as well. The second theme is around the systematic misalignment, which again, and the applications as well. I just lumped them together there. And I think what we're trying to, one of the issues to consider is really the committee in Parliament during the deliberation of DORA deliberation should challenge or maybe reject or maybe the new or the existing grant frameworks where the purpose of the grant. So meaning that now our review of the division of revenue should also take into account the alignment in particular, because we're seeing that there's a lot of that as well, as opposed to just looking at from the fines, from the allocation itself. There has to be very clear linking of the alignment, or as part of the approval for DORA, we should be satisfied ourselves as Parliament that there's a better alignment between the grants and the administration department of the core function thereof. Second point, Commission should formally consider, I noted here, committee should formally recommend perhaps that the government, national department, or national treasury, or COPTA, I don't know if it's still hot there, commission, and because one of the biggest issue, I'm going to pause a bit here. One of the biggest concerns is that we keep raising this issue of duplications. You know, we keep raising it and all that, and members also raise it. My concern here is that, is government seeing that duplication of what that we raise? Does national treasury, does departments, do they see this? Maybe one way to be on the same page, committee should commission the government for that review and really map all the monitoring or role for different spheres. In this, we should be able to eliminate those duplications, because is it only us Parliament, but maybe government should also say, are they seeing those reviews? And my view would be national treasury and department should do that analysis and indicate the duplications, or they see the replications and how such review would eliminate those. The issue of consolidated or fragmentation is a big issue, and I agree with Honorable, I think Honorable Swartz or Brett Swartz around the thinking around the consolidated of these capacity building grants in a single coordinated program, potentially managed by one department. But the bigger issue of I mean, I'm saying that could make it more easier to oversee or to manage and all of that, but of course it's going to be big. But the question will be, where is it going to be placed? Because one of the issues we now spoke about, the issue of duplications and having a lot of monitoring and so on, but you need to think about where will be positioned, because it's a big budget, and you need to usually manage the bottlenecks as well. So yes, it makes a lot of sense that avoid fragmentations, but also to avoid inefficiencies. Consolidating into a single grant could work. Sort of thing that we said also during the youth employment program at the national, where you have so much fragmentation, so you're not able to see that. So that makes sense as well at the local government sphere to have these, particularly when we've shown that there's issue of capacity around many of these municipalities to actually implement this. Again, think about where we would want it to sit when it's consolidated as well. In that regard, the third theme is around the design of the grants and implementation. And again, I mean, one of the points raised already in the conclusion slides, really, we do say that there has to be justification for indirect grants. The Commission should require any department or entity just justify indirect conditional grants before accompanied by formal justification and evidence that departments has capacity to spend it. Because that also is the area where you find a lot of underspending and evidence to show that then the committee, or as part of the grants, as part of the DORA discussions, there has to be clear justification for all those that are using this indirect conditional grants as well. The other one theme there, the third point and the second point and the third theme, really enforce correct spending classification. One of the issues there, it's around the issue of separating. I mean, to revise, and not here separate. Okay, to revise the grant framework or explicit separation of the capacity building and project preparations funds from the direct capital spending itself, to give a clear picture of the infrastructure spending. So most of the time you find that some of these costs, which are normally would be current in nature, are often lumped up in the infrastructure investment, in which case a better problem. So there needs to be that clear separation, or enforce that framework, clearly separate those as well. And the third theme, under the third point, the committee must maintain strict oversight of the reform, as we said in 2024. So they are being, again, we're reinforcing a point that we made, addressing the identified issues, not just the administration issues, because clearly there's more systematic structural issues there. The fourth point, I'm almost done, it really relates to persistent underspending and failed, what I call here failed planning or monitoring mechanisms. So what happens there, we're saying that, enforce performance transfers, which again is a very difficult point, because at the end of the day, underspending doesn't mean the objective of the spending has been realized, and there has to be some balance in thinking here, but the Committee of Parliament will recommend the immediate withheld of subsequent in-year trenches in particular, because now there's a need to continuously monitor this. Some of this underspending you pick up throughout the year as well, but then there need to be some consistent or continuously review and withhold some of this in-year subsequent trenches for municipalities that fails to miss spending on non-financial reporting deadlines for the previous quarter. So in a way, we try to force them to provide that non-performance in a quarterly basis. But again, as I say, processes are very complicated, but that's one way we could start encouraging or enforcing reporting on quarterly basis on financial information linked to the spending as well. This could stop the flow of funds for non-performing municipalities before the end of the year, and in that way, we're able to manage or at least avoid what we've seen as consistent underspending. Another thing that I feel we should do, we as Parliamentary, it's really dealing with the rejecting some of the systematic excuses. We constantly get the same excuses every year in, year out. There's the SCM problems, all those things. Those cannot be, these are management issues, meaning that you can't have the same consistent issue, which should have been planned for. And there has to be some clear mechanisms to reject those systematic response to underspending and really get the real valid reasons why we have underspending. And again, it boils back to the capacity building and how the capacity building can also be targeted more to those areas, particularly that are already known in that regard. And lastly, on this theme, is on the issue of the shovel-ready, because they have shovel-ready project pipelines. Maybe during DORA discussion, DORA should require municipalities to submit credible and costed and shovel-ready projects. And really, in our review or consideration of division of revenue as a house, we need to have some indication, particularly on those already or bigger projects, those are be submitted as well, so that when we do it in planning or recommend or approve the DORA, we have such size of those already in place. Because at times you find that those are not in place, yet the funds are allocated. But of course, there's a lot of pressure at the localized level to have a clear plan on that. So that could also be one way of ensuring there's a capacity, but also the money has been utilized as you wanted. The last thing is about the effective municipal relations. I think the recommended that DORA be take into account the requirement municipality to prove that they have budget for future, they're able to budget for the future operations or maintenance costs as well for any new infrastructure project. Because one of the biggest issues, as you've seen in the Northwest and other areas, we don't see a very consistent effort in infrastructure maintenance over the time. And maybe we should ensure that we separate those from investment, from infrastructure to maintenance, and clearly we get that lined out at the onset of the new project or infrastructure. What would be the future cost of maintenance in those? Link capacity, second point, link capacity support for current performances. Recommend that for any municipalities that constantly underspends on the key infrastructure grants, that the government or national treasury should be mandated to compel the municipality to accept or force the municipality to accept a funded targeted interventions in particular. So maybe we think about that in particular to fix the specific bottleneck, be it SCM and all those other things. That maybe there should be some clear at the outset being able to intervene. I know that's been done, but maybe again I'm putting it in a way, but driven a lot from the house or from the oversight perspective, rather than solely from the government perspective. And last point under this theme is really linked to that. Is really sort of thinking about the intervention teams. Recommended that there should be a pre-approval panel for some of these things, which is more consolidated within the sector of the local government, which can intervene. But of course, that requires more time to build the capacity. But again, coming back to the points that the colleagues have done, some of these things are really more long-term, require more long-term perspective in trying to solve them. And at times we keep meeting every year now and then and talk about the same things. Man, maybe we need a long-term thinking around to say, okay, these are the three key issues. What over long-term of the next 3 years? What other interventions we can put in place? And we will be here to support commission in that. Chair, sorry I took so long, but thank you so much. I think some of the questions might have missed, but as I said earlier, we received a letter, a report from the committee management, where we provide detailed response to some of these questions. Thank you so much. I don't know if there's further points, clarity-seeking points from members. Thank you so much, Chair members. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Prof. and the team from the PBO. I think the Secretariat have noted all the points from members, and we will share notes where maybe PBO feels that they have not sufficiently covered points made by members. Colleagues, let me take this opportunity and really appreciate, but first let me appreciate and thank Dr. Mukundi Mapangwa for having spent a week with us at the oversight last week. I must indicate that as a committee, we are looking forward to your report and to reviewing the findings and the recommendations that will come from your good selves, as you indicated that was your first oversight that you had to undertake with the committee. But also let me thank you for today's session. It was indeed an insightful engagement. This is a session that has really deepened our understanding of the local government conditional grants. And it also strengthens our capacity to conduct informed and evidence-based oversight. Colleagues, it is important that we continue to sharpen our understanding of conditional grants and related oversight responsibilities, given the important role that this sphere, which is the local government, plays in the service delivery. Because we'll remember, colleagues, that this is a sphere where every citizen lives and it experiences governments the most. I should say on behalf of the committee that we really value the continued support of the PBO. Your analysis always enhances the committee's ability to promote transparency, accountability, and fiscal discipline. We really appreciate your time and your engagements with us from on weekly basis, because really this information that you share with us really assists and it really capacitates us as members of this committee. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, PBO, and this will bring us to the engagement with our good selves. And I'm going to request through you, Prof. Jantjies, that you may vacate the platform with the team of the PBO so that members of the committee continues with the business of the committee. Thank you very much. Mr. Nodada, I'm going to request that you flag the agenda, the first set of minutes. Colleagues will be dealing with 2 sets of minutes from the previous meetings. You will take members through, Mr. Nodada.
Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members. On the screen is the set of minutes dated 8th of October 2025. The committee on the day was briefed by PBO on the Special Appropriation Bill B22 of 2025 and the third quarter municipal finance brief. Thank you, Chair. On the screen is page 1. Attendance register of members. Page 2, attendance register of colleagues. Production. Presentation by PBO. This is page 3, honorable members. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8, which is the last page. Thank you, Chairperson. Over to you.
Members have been finished with these minutes a day or two ago. Kindly, with a show of hand, can I get a mover for the adoption of this minute? Honorable Ndlovu. Honorable Ndlovu.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks very much. I move for the adoption of the minutes as we presented and its true reflection.
Honorable Ndlovu moves. Honorable Numalo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I second the move. Thank you.
Honorable Numalo seconds. The set of minutes is duly adopted. Can we get the second set of minutes, Mr. Nodada?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. On the screen, Chair and honorable members, is the second set of minutes dated 15 October 2025. On that day, the committee was briefed by National Treasury on the Special Appropriation Bill and Conditional Grants Review and Reforms. We are on page 1, honorable members. Page 2, attendance by National Treasury colleagues and the support staff. Page 3, the introduction, presentation by National Treasury. That was page 4, honorable members. This is page 5. Six. Seven. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10, which is the last page. Thank you, Chair. Over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Nodada. Any member who would like to move for the adoption of the minutes? Honorable Ndlovu.
Thanks, Chairperson. I move for the adoption of the minutes, and Honorable Sar said I must second for him because he's not able to open the.
You can't be having Honorable Swartz proxy COC. Honorable Ryder.
Chair, I'll second, please, in order to, thank you.
Honorable Ryder has duly seconded the adoption for these minutes. Therefore, they are duly adopted. Honorable members, before closing the meeting, I would like to make the following 2 announcements. I will not be in attendance of next week's meeting as I will be attending the Interparliamentary meeting on the 5th and the 6th and the 6th of November. Accordingly, it will mean that the committee will have to elect an acting chairperson to preside over the meeting, which is scheduled for next week, Wednesday, the 5th, which will be a meeting between the committee and the FFC on the Special Appropriations Bill. And it will also be the public hearings of the Special Appropriations. And I also wanted to suggest to members, this meeting is set, according to the program, it's set for 10 o'clock. If members can agree that the meeting starts at 9, we'd rather finish early. But if we start at 9, I know we will be certainly able to complete the whole work for that day because we don't know how many submissions that we will receive for the public hearings. So remember previously members has indicated that most of the time it's not sufficient for public hearings to be allocated 3 hours. So if you can allow 9 to 10 o'clock maybe to be in the engagement with the FFC, remember the special appropriations bill is one of the shortest bill that you can ever get. And then the remaining 3 hours to the public hearing, that will be agreed upon the members. I'll get an indication from your good self if maybe you allow us to start at 9 o'clock than at 10 o'clock. And then the second one, colleagues, is that the committee has received a formal approval from the NCOP chairpersons for members to be excused from the Provincial Week program, which will take place from the 18th to the 21st of November. Remember that our participation in the 2025 MTBPS processes is expected from members. So all members serving in this committee, you've been permitted to not attend your provincial week programs, rather to deal with legislative issues that will be on our table by then. These are the only two announcements that maybe I wanted to bring before the committee members. But on the first one, colleagues, I see Honorable Siwisa.
No, thank you, Chair. I want to check, Chair, the meetings for next week, are they virtual? Because I think we had an agreement as appropriation that if meetings are virtual, then we'll start at 9. But if they're physical, they'll start at 10 to allow for traveling. So I think that's one of the resolutions we once took as a committee. So if it's virtual, I think 9 o'clock will be most appropriate, and then it will give us 3 hours to engage with the stakeholders when it comes to the public hearings and submissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Siwisa. I can safely say the venue was not yet confirmed. We did not get the venue for the said meeting, so the meeting can still be on a virtual platform, as we've not until now received any confirmation on the venues requested for the meeting. So let's conclude that the meeting will be held virtual, therefore the meeting will start at 9 o'clock. Are we agreeing, colleagues?
Noted, Chair.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, having said that, this brings us to the end of our meeting. Let's meet in the house at 2 o'clock. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you very much. And bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.